Hello and welcome to Dixon Cox with me, Nick Dixon, and of course, Paul Cox, where we go through the week's news in a light-hearted way. Sometimes not the whole week's news, actually, but just the most relevant. And we do links now and everything. It's very, very exciting. And if you want the full version, as ever, go to nickdixon.net. But we'll be talking about Nigel Farage and his new deportations policy with Reform UK. And in the paywall section, we may get on to Notting Hill Carnival, which was great fun. If you like being stabbed. Paul, I believe you didn't get stabbed, but you did indeed get robbed, and you reckon it was the carnival's fault.
I believe it was. I parked in Maida Vale, and Maida Vale is for those who aren't aware, most people probably will be because it sounds nice, is a nice area of London. But on Notting Hill Carnival days, it's a kind of thoroughfare between Paddington Station and Notting Hill. So where I park is usually a quiet, leafy street reserved for I think Noel Gallagher lived in the street that my car was parked in. So I'll give you some idea. And
he probably hit the clubs. Gallagher
he's
today.
Not there no more. He's not there anymore.
Posting a selfie with your golf clubs.
That would be amazing. I'd be happy.
Kid.
I would love that. So here's the thing, right? First mistake I made was I took my clubs to London and left them in the boot of my car. They weren't on display. But I have a feeling that I left my car unlocked, and I was in a bit of a rush to leave my car. Now, my car will lock itself after about 5 minutes if I've not locked it. So I think that I left it unlocked and there was a window created. When I pulled up to try and park, there was plenty of parking spaces. And though it's actually quite far from the carnival, there were a group of chaps stood around and I kind of had to nudge on the horn, a little kind of beep, beep. Hey guys, any chance I could just park in there sort of thing. Didn't get greeted with any sort of no worries buddy. They just looked at me, and then when I got out I kind of felt really uncomfortable, but just headed off. And I think in that rush to try and get away, I think I might have forgotten to lock my car, and there wasn't much in the car. It's a hire car at the moment because I'm having my car fixed, problems being fixed on it. And the only thing that was in there was a bottle of water, an envelope with a hire agreement in it. That got taken as well. And my golf clubs and golf trolley that carries the golf club bag around the golf course in the back. They left the trolley. I was quite grateful they did. Of course they did. They had no idea what to use it for or what it meant. And they took the clubs. I don't know what they took the clubs for. I've got a feeling that it was just a kind of, how dare this person sort of. I tried my best to kind of politely lunge them out of the way. There was plenty of parking spaces. They was just stood around there. I just wanted to get in there. I was in a bit of a rush to get to the studio. And I think I might have, maybe I didn't pay attention to some of the cultural differences, and that upset them in some way.
You thought you were in a high trust society, Paul, where where people help each other. It was called England.
I was trying desperately because it's not my car, so I don't know quite. On my actual car, I probably would know how to press on the horn to give it a kind of toot toot. Excuse me, but it came out more about fuck off.
Yeah.
I got, and I remember telling her. The funny thing was, none of this seems quite. I've made it funny because it's the only way I can deal with it. But I didn't discover the clubs were missing. So you can imagine this was late Sunday afternoon, and I was there all the way through till obviously after midnight. And in fact, after midnight, I sat in the green room with Ben Leo, one of the producers, James, and Chloe Dobbs, who did the show, because they were having a celebration for Ben. It was his last show, so we actually stayed around in the studio for about an hour afterwards. And the reason I stayed, I'd normally just get on the road, is Chloe would normally get a lift back from Ben. Ben was going somewhere else where his family was. So Chloe's roughly lives on my route home. So I said, no worries, don't want to leave a young woman stranded in the middle of London in the middle of the night. So I just would hang around. So I didn't rush to get. I knew the car was locked because when Chloe arrived on her side of the car, she went to open it. It was locked, and I was like, "Oh yeah, of course, I need to unlock the car." So I knew it was locked. I just think that it was taken in that window by those chaps. Probably a 5-10 minute win. As I walked away, it wouldn't surprise me if they just brazenly opened the boot and I started looking around, took it and went. It's the liberty of it, though, isn't it? This is what really, golf club. That was about a 600 quid set of golf clubs, which I've had to replace. It's not covered on insurance. And if it was, the excess is, not much less than that. And It was covered on the late edition of Patrick Christie's last night. I had no idea, by the way, they were going to do that because I tweeted about it. And weirdly, I always forget when I tweet that people read it. I feel like I'm just kind of, there's because you hear from about 100. There's 10,000 people following me. I hear from about 100 of them on a regular basis. I just assume I'm talking to those 100. But like the producers follow me. I don't know that. Patrick Christie's is following me. Obviously, I know that, but I'm not really thinking about that. It just became this thing. So I couldn't talk about it much on TV last night because I'm making an accusation here. I don't actually know, but I think that's what happened.
We know they were a load of lads there, and then the clubs weren't there, so it's not exactly Colombo. But yeah, no. I mean, one more thing, man. Was it you who stood right next to my car? Couple of things.
Didn't report it.
There's no point. One, you're lucky you weren't beaten to death with the clubs because that's like the country we're in now. They just get your own golf club and beat you to death with it. Yeah. But two, next time, I think you'll go full falling down. Sometimes someone tries to steal your golf clubs, and you just end up smacking them to death. I know he does it with the baseball bat. I could see you going, you just had enough. Just the British everyman just broken. Just like, what do you think to this? How do you like this 3-wood? Is this the club you would use for this shot? You're smashing them.
Diversity is a strength, and so is this fucking driver.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Full falling down.
Just go mental. I was, it was kind of like I didn't report to the
bad guy.
Am I the bad guy? And most people thought it was kind of remiss of me not to report it because that would, the people on the right side of the argument, I mean, by the political right side of the argument, would like me to because it increases the stats of crime in London and piles pressure on to the economy. I assume the way they're looking at it. But I wasn't going to. What's the waste of time? I mean, it is Maida Vale. There's probably CCTV all over that street. But even if I presented CCTV to the old bill, the guy was wearing his name and address on his T-shirt, they're not going to go. Like Patrick said to me, they probably took it out the boot of your car and chucked it in the canal at the end of the road.
They'll probably find that you haven't got a license for those clubs and arrest you or something.
Yeah, well, this is it. That's exactly what would happen, wouldn't it? If you tried to stop them stealing your clubs, then...
It says here, sir, a license for a 3-wood, but not a 5. So that is, we'll have to write you up for that. That is what's going to happen.
That's exactly what would happen. I'd come like Dundee Girl version 2.
And you know what we call it, folks? We call it anarcho-tyranny. I don't even do the Trump voice anymore. I just do this. And then people...
Just do the Nick Dixon voice. Because
people can have a drink because I said anarcho-tyranny.
Straight in.
We call it anarcho-tyranny, folks. It's called anarcho-tyranny. They stole his golf clubs. He's here today. I love that. Trump brings you up. He loves my golf courses. Paul Cox. So imagine you getting brought up by Trump. He loves golf.
I mean, I think the producers genuinely thought that if I hammed it up a bit on air last night, that I might have got a free set of golf clubs off someone on the back of it.
Who's the big clubs maker these days? Wilson or something?
Well, no. They are, but they're not one of them.
How do you know tennis and football? I don't know.
Yeah, Wilson's big in tennis for sure. So it'd be something like Titleist or TaylorMade or Callaway or something of that nature.
Titleist. At least get 3 little balls from Titleist.
Yeah, that would be great. But I haven't done, and it's not really my style, and I didn't really want to make a fuss about it. I made it funny. I didn't even make it that funny. I just took the gladiator speech and just turned myself into Coximus Gammonus or whatever I did. People seem to like that. Patrick Christie's reading it out was quite amusing. Yeah,
it was funny. Well, I'm sorry that happened, Paul. And it's just pretty typical, and it's kind of typical of what we're going to talk about today because we're going to talk about the degeneracy of, I don't know, the migrant situation and why everyone's sick of it. And it's not exactly related, but it's close enough for that link. So, well, not to interrupt you. You're done with your golf side. I don't want to.
Yeah, I need to move on, mate. It's time to move on.
Okay. Because I don't want to, take away if you have more to share about your experience.
But thank you for allowing me to, continue my journey of grief with you.
No worries. So podcast starts at 10:29. Yeah. So so let's go on with the we've done, that was the banter for this week, guys. You can I'm sure you enjoyed Paul's misery. I thought we'd start with this. 7 in 10 say Keir Starmer is handling migration badly, and that comes from the Times. This is very bad for Starmer. So look at this graph. From what you've seen or heard, how well or badly do you think Starmer has handled the issue surrounding housing asylum seekers in hotels, using their words? Very well, 1%. All right. And that could easily just be an accident. That could be like someone didn't understand the question. 1%. I mean, you get 1% in most tests. You say, like, disregard. Fairly well, 10%. Total well, which means those two added up, 11%. Fairly badly, 25%. Very badly, 46%. So the total badly, 71%. Don't know, 17. So that's why they get the 7 and 10, because it's 71%. And just a further graph. Oh, and by the way, even though Blunkett says we need to leave the ECHR.
It's so bad, even Blunkett can see it is.
I know. I was going to post that as a tweet and thought, no, that's too offensive. But you've said it for me. And then this further graph. Which political party do you think would handle the problem of asylum and immigration best? Conservative 6%, Labour 9%, Liberal Democrat 4%, Green 4%, Reform 31%, strong showing, other 2%, none showing potential with 18%, and don't know 27%. So it's between Reform and the nons, the total nons. So anyway, that's the sort of backdrop, Paul. And maybe I'll give you one more thing on the way things are changing. Look at this piece from Sky, or at least this headline. Is it time for gunboats to help stop the people smugglers? And that was on Sky News.
Amazing.
Now, if you read the article, it's slightly less sort of sound than that sounds. It's a little more moderate, but it's like, for that even to exist is extraordinary. So that's the kind of context. And then I thought I'd just quickly give you, and then we can comment on it. Farage's speech and his press conference where he talked about this and what his policy is going to be.
George Cross ever made, apparently.
No, it was the biggest Union Jack, yeah.
Or is it Union Jack? Yeah.
Oh, it looked beautiful.
It looks, from this angle, it looks like a George Cross, but it might not have been. I assume it would have been a Union Jack on the basis that.
Oh, it was. And then Camilla Tominey was getting in trouble because she called it a Union Jack, not a Union flag, and all the usual pedants were coming out saying Union flag. But they're actually wrong. If you look at the Flag Institute and really do your research, it's either is fine and it's completely debated.
Also, doesn't matter. Everyone knows what you're talking about.
It doesn't matter. The public have used Jack mostly for a long, long time. And even on a ship, the Jack means the smaller little flag they'll use. But even on a ship, they'll call the other one the Union Jack, even though it's technically not a Jack. It's just evolved so that it's either is fine. But, you'll have your mid-whip flag people. Anyway, that's a little bugbear of mine because they all attack. They attack, but they're wrong, which is one of the worst traits. But let's hear just a short clip of what Farage had to say.
And frankly, the public have now just had enough. And what began as a protest of mothers and concerned citizens outside the Bell Hotel in Epping has now spread right across the country. And all of it really poses one big fundamental question. Whose side are you on? Are you on the side of women and children being safe on our streets? Or are you on the side of outdated international treaties backed up by a series of dubious courts?
First thing, can I just say, he now sounds like Nick Dixon doing an impression of Nigel Farage. I cannot hear him talk without hearing you, and it's almost identical.
You cannot hear because he does that cadence and then goes slowly. Yeah, exactly. He didn't do the shouty bit at the end, which is what he does in his show. But yeah, you're right. Look at that image, though. I mean, whatever you say about form, and I've dissed them a lot, that is a beautiful image. And if you pan out even wider, it was a massive flag. I mean, there's no doubt. And him just in the middle, it's very kind of Putin with his massive table. It's a strong image of the kind of dictator we need. I don't think Farage actually is the guy, but go on.
No, you just remind me of Ed Davey. Yesterday, he did a piece to camera saying saying that Nigel Farage is following in his hero's footsteps, and then he went on to say his hero was Putin by wanting to leave the ECHR.
Yeah,
it's all he's got to. I really don't want to cover Ed Davey. Ed Davey to me is a serious political joke. Honestly, he has no value add. The fact that his party has 70 odd seats in the British Parliament is also a joke. Adds no value whatsoever. There are some well-meaning, good people within the Liberal Democrats, I'm sure, as there are in all parties. But Ed Davey is a joke, and to make that comparison at this time now is just, what's the point? Either get involved in the debate or don't. It's just a complete distraction.
Did you see the other thing he said about Farage, Ed Davey? He said that, Churchill wouldn't agree with him. His hero Churchill wouldn't agree with him leaving the ECHR. But of course, it's ludicrous because the context was completely different in the post-war period.
Of course,
It clearly
well,
doesn't work anymore. And this is what they do: is it's a fake patriotism. So there's a meme on it's a good meme that's about Christianity. Like, I don't believe in Christianity, but if I say it to you, maybe you'll fall for it. If I say, why don't you just let in infinite migrants because Christianity, and you're supposed to just fall for it. And someone actually asked Farage a question along those lines at the end of the press conference. And people do that kind of thing. They're doing it with patriotism now. They're saying, well, Churchill wouldn't do this. So this is not very patriotic. It's like, you people are not patriotic, but you're using it against us to say that this is not patriotic. Anyway, it had a very nice big flag there, though.
And Churchill's not the paradigm for 2025 either. The paradigm for 2025 it's manifesting as we speak. We don't have, I spoke about this last night. There isn't, without reform, let's park reform for a moment, new party, biggest party in the UK nearly, but not in terms of their seats in Parliament. But outside of reform, not a single political party within the UK political sphere has the politics within their locker to tackle the problems that we've got now. They just don't have it. It's the antithesis of their politics. That they couldn't do mass deportations. They couldn't walk away from the ECHR. They couldn't turn their back on, illegal migrants. It's just not in their locker to do so. So the paradigm is being generated because nobody else could. Churchill's problems were incredibly different. The ECHR, and the reason it was generated, as everybody now knows at this point, was a result of what happened in World War II and what led to World War II. That Europe doesn't exist anymore. That Europe doesn't exist at all anymore. In fact, the term Nazi is now completely redundant. The closest thing to a Nazi now is probably on the left of politics and not on the right of politics. The whole thing doesn't make sense. We talked about it for months and months and months. There's this huge political void that's opened up and it's waiting to be filled. And at the moment, it's Nigel Farage and reform. And I said this in a tweet, I think on Friday or Saturday, because the rumours were strong, this is exactly what he was going to do. If Nigel Farage comes out and talks in the way that he has done at this press briefing just yesterday, it will change the landscape of British politics potentially forever, because it will generate a whole new paradigm by which we are measuring everything else. We have this problem now which people just do not know how to deal with, and they're clinging on. They're clinging on, it doesn't matter how many grapes they see. It doesn't matter how many essays they see. It doesn't matter how many terrified young girls and women they see. Their innate politics tells them that's okay. That's okay. It's not. Your time's over. We did it your way for decades. The time's over. We've got to save the country and save its people.
It's a good point. I mean, the irony is, of course, as well, if you really do care about Jewish people, which is one reason all those conventions were begun in the post-war period, then you would be against immigration because that's made Jewish people far less safe in the country. See all the Palestine marches, for example. And I'd even go further and say, Renaud Camus, the French writer, has a essay called "This Second Career of Adolf Hitler," where he talks about, we keep always saying his blooming name on the YouTube, but where he talks about how the phantom Hitler is, in terms of actual damage in a certain sense, though he doesn't downplay his crimes. He says the phantom mustache man is even worse in some ways, in that he stopped us having any policies that defend ourselves in the most basic way because we're then tied to him. And so paradoxically, the paranoia about the Austrian painter weirdly has made Jewish people less safe. Why? Because it's made us less robust about defending our values and our borders, which has then led to all kinds of people coming in who, guess what, don't like Jewish people. So paradoxically, if we were less paranoid about fascism and about Mustache Man, Jewish people would be safer. So that,
yeah, it's interesting. It's not lost on me that we all use the heroes of the opposite political argument against them. Amount of times I've quoted Marx, who I think is as close to as evil as Hitler in terms of what he created. And one of the best ways to attack somebody on the other side is to take their heroes and use them. Unfortunately,
that's why I take Hitler, Paul, because I know he's your hero.
He is, hence the tattoo.
The tattoo, yeah.
Yeah, well, let's not forget the tattoo.
That's what you should have done when the golf lads stole your clubs. Just pull your shirt and say, "Look at this. This is not welcome."
Come on, guys.
You go full American History X. This is not welcome. It's just your, because for people who are casual listeners, Paul has a tattoo of Hitler, and one of Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, and obviously
because he's a centrist.
I don't normally say this because, but she is getting older now. But my daughter Nuremberg is also, somebody who I've indoctrinated into the way of the right,
and also the far left.
Yeah, and the far left. Yeah. Anyway, no, I thought that was Nuremberg then, but she's busy goose stepping. Little practice she does.
Yeah. Anyway, can't remember what we were talking about, but you're right about the sort of globalist liberal order as well. I saw this tweet from this guy David Hennig, who's I don't know what he is, some boring thing, and he says, I don't care what Farage or others who say they have a simple immigration solution claim. The UK can't just walk out of international commitments without massive economic and political damage. That's a lesson of Brexit, globalization. We don't actually have full sovereignty. But I love the way they frame it. I replied, they always frame global liberal managerialism as if it has existed for eternity and must always exist. In fact, it's just one system that is now widely hated, not just by the people, but by many potential counter elites. So you kind of touched on it before when you said their time's over. It's like, no, we're inevitable. This won't work for us. Just can't work. But actually, you can just do things. So anything can be done if you have the political will, as we've seen many times. But it's like good or bad. But it's like, they pretend it's inevitable, but it is coming to an end. Although we didn't get into the detail, which we'll get into in a sec. But go on, anything else?
The irony is that it is progressive, what Nigel Farage is doing. We seem to have adopted this idea, largely because of the way the left frame it, that progressivism can only travel in one direction. That's not true. You can progress in any direction you like. They've co-opted the word progress. I come back to this word paradigm, the thing by which we can view and compare against. We are in a kind of unprecedented situation where, and this is why I talk about sea changes and the political landscape changing, because there would be nothing to compare it to. So people are just pulling things out of the air going, well, we'd be the same as the Nazis if we did this. No, well, of course we wouldn't. We're trying to save ourselves. And sometimes you need to look back at history and use it to your advantage. I mean, I think I was listening to one of your podcasts recently with Bo, and he was talking how history doesn't repeat itself. And he's right. It doesn't repeat itself directly. But we're in danger of not learning the lessons from history. And we're in danger of taking something that's pretty much time-stamped during the early 20th century and trying to apply it to the early mid-21st century. And of course, it doesn't scan. We have this problem now. There was a story on BBC, I think, today, where they showed a 1980s view of Bournemouth Beach, and it looked exactly as you'd imagine on Bank Holiday August weekend. Lots of people. Bournemouth is a really nice area, by the way. Historically, a very nice area. It's got some incredibly expensive property around there in Sandbanks, which is close to the pool, actually, but just down the road. A very wealthy area. Largely would have been white, Quelle surprise, considering that most of the country is, particularly during the 1980s, even more so. And then they showed the images from this weekend, just gone, and it's totally different. Muslim women completely covered up, 80-90% migrant population. It's not quite that high, but in this picture it was. And the whole vibe has changed. People praying on the beach, pointing towards Mecca, of course, not pointing towards anything else. And we're supposed to just go, oh, that's okay. That because of multiculturalism, because of progressivism. We're supposed to go, well, we just accept that. What's wrong with that? That wasn't, A, no one ever agreed to it. And B, that was not what we were sold. So we never agreed to this mass migration. And when it was happening anyway, irrespective of whether we agreed to it or not, we were told that it would look like this utopia. Well, it didn't fucking look like that, did it? It didn't look like Bournemouth Beach on Bank Holiday Sunday and Monday just gone. And it's not a no-go area, but you don't go there. You see that, and you're like, it's not for us anymore.
Yeah. All right.
And I don't want to other them, which is a term. I'm not trying to other anyone. It's just we talked about the flags, we talk about culture. It's all about, we're gripping on desperately to something that we know. And because we know once it's gone, and we don't know what it looks like outside of that. And by the way, that's true. I'm not trying to scare anyone to death. If you let this go now, if you don't fight for it now, it is gone.
Yeah, and let's go on then to what, because I've got so many links here. This is kind of like maybe it's too many for the podcast, but this is the actual reform policy, Operation Restoring Justice. Nice picture of a plane there. And if you scroll down, they've got lovely white cliffs. Some people said it's a bit light on detail, but look at the nice pics. And what they want to do, of course, is leave the ECHR, which makes them, as Matt Goodwin said, the first party to actually say that, because Kemi constantly talks about it, but doesn't quite say she's ready to leave. Repeal the Human Rights Act and replace it with the British Bill of Rights, which later we'll see Rupert Lowe says you don't need. Pass the illegal migration mass deportation bill. So we can't go through it in detail. It'll be kind of a boring podcast. But one thing they wanted to do was leave the 1951 UN Refugee Convention for 5 years, they said, interestingly, and then they'd look at going back. They wanted to basically suspend it. It wasn't clear if you can actually suspend it. You'd have to leave and come back in. But it's a sort of a moderate take, but yeah, saying it doesn't work anymore. This is an interesting ish. Create detention power without Hardyall Singh constraints. I had to look into this. This means illegal migrants can be detained until they're deported. Activist lawyers routinely use Hardyall Singh to secure their client's bail, after which the client absconds. So this comes from a 1983 case, Hardyall Singh versus Governor of Durham Prison. And it's basically the relevant power to detain must only be used for the specific purpose for which it is authorized. The detention may only continue for a period that is reasonable in all circumstances for the specific purpose. If before the expiry of the reasonable period, it becomes apparent that the purpose of the power cannot be affected within that reasonable period, the power to detain should not be exercised. And finally, the detaining authority must act with reasonable diligence and expedition to effect removal. So it just gives migrants more rights that they're saying we would get away from by taking away the Hardyall Singh constraints. If you came to the UK illegally, you're ineligible for asylum. End of story. Re-entering after deportation and destroying ID becomes a serious criminal offence. Lifetime re-entry ban. And then you've got a few other things. It's a fairly short piece and I have another nice picture of a plane at the end. So that was the policy. And so a few things happened. One is they immediately seem to slightly go back on some of the things they said, which is kind of classic Farage. So here he talks about whether women and children will be included.
Yesterday, what I said, that the deportation of illegal immigrants, we were not even discussing women and children at this stage. There were so many illegal males in Britain. And the news reports that said that after my conference yesterday were wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong.
So women and children will be exempt?
I didn't say exempt forever, but at this stage, that is not part of our plan for the next 5 years. Absolutely.
So some people said that was a climb down because that's already more moderate. Some people may be fine with that.
Well, I mean, the only thing I would say on that is show me the women and children that are in now. We see the migrant hotels. We see them getting off the bus in their new shoes with their new phone, going in through the reception of the 3- and 4-star hotel for a life of medium comfort and, 3 meals a day. What we don't see is any women and children in that cohort at all. So do you know what? Whilst I don't actually believe that was a climb down, in the sense that he didn't say it. And I'm not here to stick up for Nigel Farage, but he didn't say it. He left them out deliberately. However, if you just had women and children, you wouldn't have most of the problems for a start.
They have some of the economic problems, but not the crime problems.
Exactly. They wouldn't be anywhere near the numbers there are in terms of the male cohort. You wouldn't have the crime problems, as you've already pointed out.
But also, how would these women and children get over? Because
they wouldn't come without.
They wouldn't
come without at all.
No.
So I think he's thinking along those lines. It would kind of become like this moot point where it doesn't matter. The problem would solve itself largely.
Shall I tell you
with regards to the case law from 1983. Again, a different time, different paradigm, different way of comparing and viewing the world. That doesn't exist anymore. That was when, numbers were minute by comparison. The dust in your pocket. That's what the numbers were then. Now it's immeasurably large. Immeasurably in the sense we actually don't know how large it is because, masses of them are illegally here without being documented in any way, shape or form. So you can't. Whilst I was saying, we can learn from history, we also have to start to, create something new. And this is what I'm talking about, the sort of right progressivism, where you go, okay, what are we going to do to solve this? Nobody's figured it out before. It's brand new. Someone needs to come in. And you know what? It's not going to be easy, but it's kind of tough tits because we're not going down this route any further. People have had enough.
Yeah, and we don't know. I mean, maybe someone knows. It's hard to quickly on a podcast get the demographic information from 1983 to confirm your point. But the ONS indicates that in 1981, this is just going off AI, the white share of England's population was around 95.4%. You can easily imagine that it was a very, very different country. We all know this, as Paul says. Do you know who, Paul, the policy has gone down well with, reforms policy? Do you know that? You probably know this already, don't you? But I'll find it for you. So basically, certain people have loved this policy in this press conference. Certain people haven't. One group that has liked it is the Taliban. So Taliban, we're ready to work with Farage on migrants.
Big up the two boys.
Yeah, top lads. I mean, got to hand it to them. A lot easier to work with than the EU, right? Just straight out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll work with you. They're not calling
anyone
Hitler.
Less threatening than the EU.
No sanctions. No one's being called Hitler. No one's pretending to ruin democracy. It's just like, yeah, we'll work with Farage. And look at them here, top lads, and
just out for a day of bans, and
they've got they're out for a day of parking their car in Maida Vale, Paul. That's what they're.
Hang on a minute, that's not fucking golf clubs. No.
That's what they're ready for. That's how you should have gone to Maida Vale. So the Taliban has actually on that point. If you found this, like you find that stash of weapons in a car. Do you actually take the weapons? Because the guy who has those weapons is then going to be after you. Do you know what I mean? They're very valuable, but you think, actually, I might leave this one.
Yeah. I do not want to upset this dude who casually carries around Kalashnikovs in his boot.
Yeah. So it says the Taliban has said it is ready and willing to work with Nigel Farage to accept Afghans who have been deported from the UK. A senior Taliban official said they would embrace any Afghans sent back under the reform leader's plan. That's nice, isn't it? And they go on, the official says, where is it? He says, we are ready and willing to receive and embrace whoever Farage sends us. We're prepared to work with anyone who can help end the struggles of Afghan refugees, as we know many of them do not have a good life abroad. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. They don't have great time here often. We will not take money to accept our own people, but we will welcome aid to support newcomers, since there are challenges in accommodation and feeding those returning from Iran and Pakistan. Anyway, he goes on and says, Afghanistan's home to all Afghans. We'll work with anyone who wants to work with us. And there's a little funny poll here. Are you in favor of reforms planned to work with the Taliban? I'm just going to click yes just to see what happens. 69% say yes from 26,000. So there you go.
I mean, it just so happens that if this, by the way, was switched around the other way and the left were arguing, they would easily have the opposite argument, because they would say, well, of course the Taliban, we have to work with people across the world. That's the whole point of, global geopolitics, is you have to do this. And they'd be right. The Taliban are in charge of Afghanistan, where, the Americans have a lot to do with that. And who else are you going to work with? They haven't got, they haven't got their own Keir Starmer. Imagine a Keir Starmer running Afghanistan. Far right thuggery. That's all of them, mate, by the way. That's what's mental about this, is the image of these people here. If you plastered that around the tube, most people would think it was a left-wing advert.
that's the Palestine march this weekend.
That's exactly what they would think. Without me even taking the piss or using any irony whatsoever, they would just assume that was a left-wing advert. Good, well-meaning chaps just out on a jolly jaunt with their AK-47.
Corbyn's the driver. You can't just out of shot.
Yeah, well, that's what you can't see just in front there. Just him and what was his oppo's name? McDonald.
McDonald, yeah.
Yeah, McDonald. Yeah, just in the front there.
I'm throwing a lot of links at you, Paul. I mean, it's very link heavy.
Taliban clunge.
Sorry for cutting you off during that. I wanted to hear that. I feel I'm sharing a lot of links, and to be honest, I've just done a 3-hour stream, so it's frying my brain as well. But it is quite important. Rupert Lowe says, I've taken a good look at the reform deportation policy, inverted commas. It did not take long to read through the 3.5 pages. On the numbers, there's a serious lack of ambition. Farage pledged to deport just 600,000 illegal immigrants in his first term if he becomes Prime Minister. We have roughly 2 million illegal migrants from alien cultures roaming the streets of Britain. It'll be far worse in 2029. The aim to deport 600,000 over one parliament in all likelihood addresses far less than half of that problem. It's simply not good enough. And he the whole thing's quite long, but he goes on about how it's not enough. And actually, the problem with that is, Paul, that I read another piece, might have been in The Spectator, I can't remember now, about the difficulty of actually doing it, that it'll take years to even get it started. Obviously, all the opposition, and it'll take 3 years to get. So even though Rupert Lowe is saying it's not adequate, even deporting 600,000, near impossible. you know, in this current system. Not saying it can't be done, but the resistance that you'll face.
Yeah. You'll have to change law in order to make it work. I think 600,000 is a calculated bet by Farage and Reform, on the sense that they've gone, this is going to be incredibly difficult to achieve. You know what? At this point, we'd take 600,000. I get that Rupert's got to attack this. Rupert makes some strong points in there with regards to the numbers, and it won't solve the problem, but it's light years ahead of where we are. I think the financial argument will just crumble into dust very quickly, because it doesn't matter how much this costs. We can't, you know, we're past the point of moralizing this now as well. You can't sort of say, oh, well, you know, this is an acceptable amount of grape. No one wants that argument. And I don't want to meet the person who wants that argument. And if we find the person who says what the acceptable amount of grape is, we need to lock them up and allow them to be graped and see how much they like it. So that the moralization of it, I think, will quickly fall down, because we're on a warlike footing, really. We're under attack. And, you know, desperate times call for desperate measures. This is a desperate measure, and we need to change our politics. So the financial side, the moralizing side, I think are arguments that can be won. They can be debated forever, but they'll be won. The most difficult thing is the practicality, the mechanism which to do it. In order to do that, you've got to be able to prove in today's by today's policy mechanism, the tools available, the systems available to you now, you've got to be able to prove it can be done. And it's impossible to do so, because if you switch tomorrow and try to do it, you couldn't do it. The ECHR would stop you. The European Union would stop you.
Yeah.
The UN would stop you. There'd be people around the world stop you. You'd be locked up in all sorts of court cases infinitum.
Which is what the Spectator piece is all about.
However, if you just do it anyway, and you say to hell with the ECHR, and you say to hell with, you know, the UN, things are achievable. I think if you started pushing hard enough, doors would open. If you just went, you're going back, you just fly them in. Boom, 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 boom. I mean, Afghan and Taliban seem to be quite open to it. A lot of them will go back there.
Well, the Taliban sorted their drug problems. We know one thing about the Taliban: they get things done. All right,
efficient guys. Guys. I mean, look at them.
If you want a job, Paul has an old saying: if you want a job doing, give it to the Taliban.
I do. And so does Nuremberg. She's always saying that now. She's just finished her GCSEs. And she
might need a third tattoo.
Yeah, I do. So, God, flipping it. Sorry if you can hear that. Nuremberg is goose stepping outside the door now, and she does do it loudly. Lots of chanting. Yeah, I know.
Just on the difficulty of doing it, you know, Spectator here talking about, this is Andrew Tettenborn in the Spectator, talking about how trying to move 600,000 is pretty difficult. On average of 120,000 removals a year is a tall order, especially when opposed tooth and nail, not only by carefully primed lawyers and the entire liberal establishment, but also by a number of people who have little respect for any legal niceties when it comes to putting a physical spoke in the deportation wheels. Yeah, all this sort of activists. Leaving the ACHR takes giving 6 months notice. Denouncing the Refugee Convention 1951 requires 1 year. It has no provision for suspension, so it'll probably be a case of temporary departure, as I said earlier. Both would be preliminaries. He goes on about how incredibly difficult it would be, and we all know it would be extraordinarily difficult. Overall, of course, it's the right direction. I mean, I haven't had time to fully digest it, but it's basically, it's better than nothing, as you said. It's not enough, as Rupert Lowe says. It's an interesting shift in that clearly we have shifted the Overton window. Everyone on the so-called online right has done that. Farage a while ago was saying it couldn't be done, or he says there's a nuance, and he was talking about no people born here, it can't be done, and that's a different thing. Whereas then Rupert Lowe counters, no, what about the people who aided and abetted the grooming gangs? They should all go. So Farage for now is just talking about illegals, and he's not even talking about all of them, he's talking about some of them. So yeah, but then even the difficulty of that is almost insurmountable. So you realize where we are with this incredibly entrenched liberal managerial global elite, the difficulty of dismantling something like that. You know, people are always saying, there was a tweet today from an American, like, why are British people not taking up arms? Because there was this poor Scottish girl who had resorted to getting out weapons, and it's an ongoing case. Won't talk about it too much, but I'll just give you this tweet from Eric Mattany. Men of Great Britain, you're a bunch of effing cowards who should bury your heads in shame for what you've allowed to happen to your once great nation. This is your doing. This little girl should live carefree in the knowledge that the men in her community will protect her. But you know, the idea that like street violence, and by the way, I said that Americans have all these guns and they've done nothing. The idea you can stop this blob and this bureaucracy and this pathological system, as Dominic Cummings calls it, with random street violence. No, you need to get incredibly organized, because they're incredibly organized. So we're now seeing the start of it. Farage saying this is a big deal, but it's like, how do you dismantle those treaties and bodies we always talk about?
A couple of things. So the first thing to remember is you're fighting a system that has been entirely designed by the people that support it. So everybody who wants to continue with illegal migration, continue with mass legal migration, continue with multiculturalism, continue with all the divisive natures of what's going on, they, over successive decades, have designed the mechanisms and systems by which we now have to use to try and get out of it, which is impossible. We're entirely snookered by the system. That's why you have to start to pull back on it. And we will have to do, and I'm fully behind this, and I'm not even sure where it starts and ends. We will have to do some illegal things in order to make this successful. So the first thing to bear in mind is, of course, it's very easy at this point to say it's impossible, because you designed the flipping system. So we're working against, the enemy had designed the system in which we are trapped. So now it's, you break it down. And when you're attacking the enemy, you don't go, oh, what are the rules? Sometimes you have to break the rules. The second thing is, we don't really do breaking news on here, but I will just say, and I don't know if you've seen it, Tommy Robinson will not be charged over the train station altercation, police say. So back to the story now.
Oh, that's good. I mean, because hopefully he'll do my podcast, selfish reasons, but and I don't want Tommy to go to jail again or anything.
But yeah, so it's incredibly difficult to see a way through unless we make massive, drastic changes. And this is why I keep talking about the comparisons and the paradigm and looking back. We cannot. It's all about going forward now. It's all about breaking through, not making comparisons, and creating a new paradigm. I keep using that word on this the word of the bloody podcast, because we cannot at all see our way through using anything that's existed before. It has to be brand new.
We're in the liberal managerial progressive panopticon.
That's exactly where we are. We are in Keir Starmer's wank
May's
site.
like prison. We're in he's like the Starmer is the Minotaur, and we're trapped in the maze. But I just want to see, I've turned this podcast into more of a Lotus Eater thing, Paul. So I know I'm sharing an awful lot of stuff. So it's just hard to keep up if we're going to end up here for hours. But I just wanted to share this as well, which is Rael Braverman, Suella Braverman's husband, was in reform, felt he had to leave because Zia Youssef kept attacking his wife. He said there is a wide open goal for any political party capable of producing a serious, detailed deportation plan, one robust enough to withstand the fiercest scrutiny. Rupert Lowe says, stay tuned. And then he clarified, because that sounds like he's going to start a political party. Is he going to get together with Ben Habib? Mm-hmm. But then he clarifies here, someone says for the deportation plan or the party, he says Restore is doing such impressive policy work behind the scenes, looking forward to sharing it soon. So it kind of suggests he more means the policy. So anyway, but then I thought this was really interesting. Elon Musk gets involved, as he is wont to do. And he says, if you can see that there, unfortunately, the reality is that Farage will do almost nothing to protect Britain. That is obvious. Existing law is clear that anyone who was an accessory to aggravated rape or murder, especially of children, is guilty of serious crime and must either serve time in prison if a citizen or be deported if not. The government simply needs to enforce the law. Now, this is the reason this is relevant. A few reasons, of course. Rupert Lowe had said Farage has just attacked me for backing mass deportations, and he'd laid out his position. It's just interesting Musk getting involved once again to attack Farage on this day when Farage was making this big splash about his policies. It's obviously bad for Farage, but it's interesting that Musk doesn't think he's up to it still. And he even goes further and says Advance UK will actually drive change. Farage's weak source who will do nothing. Pretty interesting. And Ben Habib replies to him, obviously saying the time is for Advance UK. Matt Goodwin also got involved. No disrespect to the people involved, but if you think Ben Habib, a person 99% of Britain have never heard of, and his party, which 99% of the country have never heard of, is the way forward, and you really don't know all that much about British politics, Britain needs urgent and radical reform. And Ben, of course, replies saying, by your own yardstick, no one should ever enter politics. You forget reform was nowhere when I joined it. Together with Richard Tice and the team, we got it to 16% before the general election. And then he says the reform government will be a disaster, and Advance has a clear philosophy. So one more, and then we'll comment. Matt Goodwin again. Farage literally just became the first party leader to call to leave the ECHR, appeal Blair's Human Rights Act, and detain and deport. So many people on X, with due respect, are morons. This is your one chance to correct the system. And this was in reply to someone saying Farage doesn't have what it takes. So I know I've dumped a lot of tweets there, but basically, one thing on the Goodwin one, it's never a good tactic. And this is employed by reform cultists all the time and reform advocates. It's never a good tactic to call people morons and say, you have to vote reform, idiot. They're the only chance. What's wrong with? I thought Matt's tone was absolutely bizarre there. Interesting to see Elon, he seems to be backing Advance. We know before that he backed Rupert Lowe only sort of with a tweet. And there's an argument that he doesn't really do anything. He just likes to back someone, then move on. He's just tweeting that day. He says a lot on Twitter. Doesn't mean anything. But if he did seriously back Advance and give him some money, and if Rupert even eventually gets together with Ben in some way, I don't know what's happening with that. Maybe it's a serious alternative. I don't know, Paul. It's an interesting thing because just as Farage is actually getting a bit more based, or with his deportation plan, Musk is still saying no, he's not up to it. Rupert's saying no, he's not up to it. I guess there's nothing new about that. Perhaps the intervention from Musk in favor of Advance is new. I don't know. What do you make of all that?
It's really interesting because I think it's quite an Americanization of politics to attack the person rather than the idea. And we more freely attack the person than the idea now. If I was to put a serious political post on X, I would, and it was, it evolved from or evolved around one particular person, I still would never attack the person. I wouldn't say this person's a moron. I would avoid that at all costs because you immediately lose the people you're trying to win over. All the people who think he's a moron are already on your side anyway, okay? So you don't need to win those over. The whole point of the debate is to bring as many people to your side of the argument as possible. And it's maybe quite a British view of the world. I don't know, but it feels an Americanism to me. And it's crept into our politics quite a lot, perhaps over the last 10 to 20 years. Some people would say it was a Trumpism. It's people forget that long before Trump, the American style of politics was much more personal than ours has ever been. We sort of play a Queensberry rules by comparison, in which they don't. And maybe that's what we need. Maybe those type of measures are required. Who am I to say? I can't see me following that. I don't think I've ever really seen you doing that, Nick, and people I admire really. I think you have to avoid it because, like I just say, you're trying to win people over, hearts and minds, etc., and don't necessarily do that by attacking people because British people feel quite squeamish about that to some extent. And
I'll certainly attack lefties, but I certainly wouldn't if I was Goodwin trying to. I wouldn't attack. I mean, I don't. There's some things I won't do. Like I'll try not to comment on appearance, but when it comes to some of the really scumbag lefties, you sort of think I'll go at them a bit harder. But you wouldn't go at someone who's just saying Farage is too wet. That's a valid. And shut up, it's your only chance. I really hate that. Shut up, it's your only chance, peasant.
Yeah, that's also a weak argument. The idea that everybody should coalesce around one person on the right is obviously for the birds as well. It's never going to happen. There wasn't a right of politics. There was a weak, flaccid right in terms of the Conservative Party for many years. The more I learn about the Thatcher years, even, it wasn't especially right. We've probably not had a right-wing government ever. I'm just trying to think. You go right the way back. No, not in the 21st, not in the 20th century. And my knowledge of politics gets a little bit sketchy as soon as you get into the Victorian era and before. So I'm not best qualified to answer that. But it doesn't feel like we've ever really had right wing. And of course, it all depends where the Overton window is as well, because you go back to sort of Churchill's early days. When he was still a fighting man. What would have been considered right wing is far to the right of what we would consider right wing now, of course. So there's a nuance to that needs to be taken into account.
And there's a flip side of that as well, which is although that's true in social attitudes and so on, you can flip it and say they were conservatives. What we haven't had is a right like a European right, and maybe the accusation of reform is they're a more European style right. I don't think they are. I think they're a centre-left party that still allows for a Rupert Lowe party, and that actually reform are trying to replace Labour. Look how badly Labour are doing and how badly Starmer's doing. Look at that graph we shared at the start. Labour falling apart, Reeves is falling apart, the economy is going to crash. Farage is replacing Labour on the centre left, and then it allows a Ben Habib, Rupert Lowe to come in. That's a possibility.
He certainly will take a lot of their voters because a lot of Labour voters, the core red wall voters, it's easy to say this. Everybody knows this. Working class, unionised men and women that are the type of people that are now attacked on a regular basis by Keir Starmer and his cronies. So, of course, they're going to go across. Nigel Farage is intelligent enough to know how to take them as well. Basically, giving them the type of politics they were used to from the 90s back to World War II, which is, we'll do the right thing by the working man, we'll recognise who you are, and you are part of us. Where this kind of, I don't know what it is now, ultra progressive, it's beyond champagne socialism. I've no idea. Keir Starmer doesn't know what he represents. How on earth am I supposed to understand? But whatever that centrist dad wank sock type politics is supposed to represent, I don't know. You know, people in wonderfully lethal Freudian slip, leafy streets within North London, perhaps people who just believe that they can maintain their status quo by following people like Jeremy Corbyn, etc. The world's going to come and bite them very hard. So Nigel Farage, I think, is right to try and win over Labour voters. I think there's still a debate to be had where he's trying to be centre left or whatever. I know we've strongly argued for and against Farage over the years on this particular channel. One thing we've always said, though, is that there's this huge void opened up and people are trying to fill it at the moment. The main character remains Farage, and his supporters are going to stand steadfast by him. He chose to kick Rupert Lowe out into the peripheries, and he's going to be a nuisance all the time he possibly can. Ben Habib also, I think he's less influential than Rupert Lowe for obvious reasons, but he's also someone that's been kicked out of the party. They're designing this to go in the Yusuf direction, and that doesn't include the people I've just aforementioned. I'm not sure what it looks like when it arrives at its destination. I really don't. I have no idea. But we are generating a new right, a new populist right within British politics. I don't think anyone knows what it looks like yet. The idea we're going to get humans to coalesce around one person just uniformly is obviously nonsense, so that's not going to happen. But I'm not quite sure how it ends up, Nick.
Where are you thinking at the moment? Would you vote Reform? Would you wait for Advance, or would you? What would you do?
So tomorrow, if there was an election tomorrow, for me, there's only one choice, and that is Reform, because I think the winds of change are propelling them forward. Genuinely do. In 4 or 5 years' time, or whatever it would be, 3 or 4 years' time, 2029, 2030. Who knows? There's a long way to go. It would take a government collapse for us to have a general election in that time, and I'm not sure that's coming. See
the clip where they say to Farage, next election 4 years, he goes, "Do you really think it'll be 4 years?" So he doesn't even think it'll be 4 years.
No, but do you know what? Do you know what? In order for it not to be, they've got to capitulate. We aren't talking about the Tory party here. Whether you hate them or loathe them, the Tory party will not just stand by and watch something be destroyed. They would rather destroy it themselves than allow somebody else to destroy it, okay? Which led to all sorts of changes through that period from 2017 through to 2024, okay? Labour are far too full of hubris and arrogance to allow that. These are people... The way I like to think about these type of people in politics is they're your local councillor who has never had any luck in life but has always fancied him or herself to be something special. And when they get to council level, God, are they going to cling on to it, and God, do they enjoy that power. That's exactly what you've got at the highest end of British politics now. People that all they ever wanted was the power, not to make change. Don't ever kid yourself that there's anyone within that cabinet right now that's set about their political... They may also... Angela Rayner, for instance, would have set about her political career wanting to make real change, real social change for working people. That doesn't exist for her anymore. She's got 3 flats. Okay? Done. See you later. One of them's 800 grand. It's done. It's bollocks. You know, if she tries to convince me of that, I'll call her a liar. An absolute liar. It's nonsense now. There's no one who's... I mean, say what you like. I'm going around all over like a weather vane at the moment. But I was talking to a lefty just last night, and you know, everybody says the same thing. Say what you like about Jeremy Corbyn, and boy, have I said some shit about him. I don't like him or his politics whatsoever. But you always knew exactly what he stood for. Okay, none of this weather vane bollocks that you're seeing from Keir Starmer right now. Who we have no idea. He basically goes wherever Nigel Farage leads, and that's not Labour politics. That's Farage politics. So. But Jeremy Corbyn, you can look at an interview from 1983 and look at one from 2025, and he's almost saying exactly the same thing. I hate it, but he's saying exactly the same thing. Okay, and within the Labour government at the moment, the senior levels of Labour government, nobody believes in anything. There is no ideological drive whatsoever, which is much more dangerous because they are only there for power. You've talked about it, the managerial class. They are only there simply for that power, and they will cling on as long as possible, I think.
Yeah, I just want to end on a couple of things. One is just a thought that my concern with Farage remains that the regime seems to want him. The regime seems to accept him, and maybe that's the best we can get. But it's will that represent real change? And my rule of thumb for who the regime wants and doesn't want is very simple. The ones they don't want get kicked out of reform. So Rupert Lowe kicked out. James McMurdoch, you're like, oh, he seems good, kicked out. Very interesting. And then the ones that are in, Tice, Sarah Poachin, Jake Berry, these wet Tories, or certainly, well, yeah, Berry's a wet Tory, Poachin maybe slightly less wet Tory, but they're all Tories. And we've just seen today, as we record, Graham Simpson joined from the Scottish MSP. So, they get all these Tories in, and they're obviously the ones that are welcome. And the ones I go, oh, he's really based, Rupert, booted out. So that's my rule of thumb for who the system wants to allow in. Just a quick word on Kemi as well, just because you mentioned the Tories there. I thought there was a whole Times piece we haven't covered, Times profile of Kemi. It's the longest the journalist has spent with her. One funny bit, she spent the past 10 months traveling the country on visits like this one, listening to voters' anger and cleaning up the shop. The shop's not open yet, she says. When the shop opens, which will be very soon, people are going to be really pleased. I'm like, open the fucking shop, Kemi. Yeah. It's like, you've got to... Farage is like, he's got a massive union jack. We're going to deport everyone. We're going to do it now. We're winning. And then Kemi's like, I haven't opened my... Just Kemi with a little lemonade stand outside the conference. Not even open yet. Can I get a lemonade? No. You can in 3 to 6 months. Open the fucking shop, Kemi. Your party, the most successful party in Europe, is being destroyed. And you're not opening the shop. Of course, another argument is she'll be more serious. They'll have actual policies. Farage is all slogans. That's the other argument. But you've got to do both. It's kind of like Man United, Paul, to bring it back to what we really understand. Man United are trying to rebuild. They had a great empire. It fell apart. Maybe we can relate. Now trying to rebuild it. And the problem is it's going to take a long time. We don't have a good goalkeeper. We don't have a central midfielder. But then at the same time, we need to win every game or the manager's sacked because he had a terrible record last season. He's got about 5 games. If he lost 3 in a row, it'd probably be sacked. So it's like, how do you do it? How do you be Kemi and you rebuild? At the same time, you've got to open your shop, but you've also got to get the shop right because they hated the last shop. But it's almost unwinnable because the longer you take to open it, you're just getting obliterated by Farage.
Absolutely. Of course, the cynic in women would tell you that the reason she's taking so long to open the shop, as soon as she opens it and everyone goes inside and go, fuck me, it looks like the old shop, she's dead. And politically dead, it's all over. And then Genrick or whoever comes, Philp or someone or somebody we haven't even heard of yet, comes in. So long as she keeps the shop closed, say the refurb's going to be amazing, she stays in power to some degree. So that would be my cynical view on it. It would take something absolutely dramatic from the Tories. It would have to be Reform Plus. It would have to be Restore level, Rupert Lowe-esque level policy to outflank Farage. Because people now, whereas people may have voted for Labour or Tory or Lib Dems, before, because they understood them, it kind of made sense. It was red, yellow, blue. They kind of knew that they'd done it before. It'd be okay. Everybody's had enough of that now. Even the Labour voters on the left have had enough of Labour. This is why you'll see the Jezbollah party do well in the polls as soon as it gets on its feet. People have had enough, so they're going to look for something new. So she's going to have to generate that newness from within this old stately, stodgy mess that's the Tory party.
I thought you were going to say old paradigm, just to make it the 10th.
I'm trying not to.
All right, I think that's a very decent chunk of free show. What we're going to do now is talk about Notting Hill Carnival for a laugh, because not that stabbings are funny, but the responses to them actually are sadly funny in a ridiculous way in the mainstream media. Go to nickdixon.net for the full episode. It's only £5, and actually, if you get the yearly option, it works out as £4.17 a month. We've got over 600 paid subscribers now, which is very good. A lot of bigger guys you think are bigger than that, guys and girls. You find out their paid subscriber number, it ain't all that. Even if they have more free. Why? Because the quality is there on nickdixon.net. You get full versions of this podcast, the extra podcast me and Paul do, which I'm releasing a new one of very soon, which is only on nickdixon.net. You get all my full interviews with people like David Starkey, Bo Dade, the one from the other day. You only get the full version on there. And so you just get all that stuff. And also you help support us and do this kind of work, because who else is out here talking about this kind of stuff, putting themselves out there? Well, there's a few, but a lot of them are slop and a lot of them are a mainstream containment, whereas we're just the real deal. So go to nickdixon.net. That was my sales pitch. Go to @PaulCoxComedy. Anything you want to say before we go into the paywall, Paul?
No, just as I say every week, keep it real.
Do you say that? Is that your thing?
Never said that before, no.
All right, keep it real, guys, and we'll see you on the audio and YouTube very soon. And blooming subscribe and like on YouTube. I never say that, but please
do that. For goodness sake. Share it as well. Tell people about it. Tell people about it. Look, the amount of people who sort of say, they'll comment on an X post that I do. Oh, I love you from, I found you via Dixon Cox. Don't tell me. I love it. I already love it. Don't tell me. Go and tell Harry, Larry, and Barry down the pub.
Go
and tell them all about it.
Was that Billy Joel? Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see some of you on nickdixon.net.